March 5th, 2025. So time is definitely flying, but I'm sure that everything is moving in the right direction because what the country has planned basically should work out. Here is Allah already. Allah, hello Odessa. Allah wrote that Ukraine should be a prosperous and peaceful country, but something went wrong. Reptiloids came and took over everything that belongs to the people. They succeeded, and it hurts. Allah, well, I honestly want to say that really, those who came to power, well, for the last 33 years, you could say they were definitely Satanists, because I agree with you, it's both reptiloids, Satanists, and all sorts of scum. This communist rabble, and basically America is also to blame here, you could say, for not breaking it up. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, they should have finished off this communist Kiribist Hydra, but at the moment the situation looks like this. So hello, Avli Life, hello, Anatoly Pavlovich, yes, greetings to everyone. Well, as for the main events at the moment, Trump wants Europe to completely give up Russian oil. US President Donald Trump stated on Thursday that Europe should stop buying Russian oil and put economic pressure on China in an attempt to stop the war in Ukraine, a White House official reported, as the administration appears to have placed the responsibility on its EU allies for broader involvement in ending the conflict. Trump made these comments on Thursday during a phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other European leaders, the third coalition of the willing. But as always, these European socialists who talk a lot but do nothing have once again gathered and are putting on a show as if they are actually doing something. But in reality, Trump actually wants to solve the problem because up until now, Europe is still buying energy resources. That is, it used to be about 30% more, and now it's still around 12-13%. And of course, if Putin's oxygen is cut off here, then let him sell his oil to India and China for free, because no one there is going to pay him real money. The fact that Putin came to bow before Xi and there, Russia is 100% a vassal of China and China is to blame. I blame him for the fact that this whole massacre started, definitely. Andriy Sharval Viv among the ends, the mess under Tremeti Chechnya about the right independence you were, Stesha gave help to Russia, something melted into pieces. Yes, well, just in the last, more than 20 years now, let's say almost 30, already after Reagan came to power, who really wanted to carry out reforms in China, and he supported the conservative wing of America, but all the rest of them, the leaders who came to power in the United States were pro-democratic and pro-communist leaders. That's why America ended up in such a situation. That's why China grew, and that's why Europe found itself in this position. And in the end, this led to war, because Putin expelled the globalists, all those non-governmental organizations left the country, and as a result, they realized that Putin wouldn't obey them. At that point, China joined in and essentially pushed Europe into this war, because it's beneficial for China if Russia is at war, if Europe is at war. If America is at war too, even if it's just supplying weapons and providing support, that's still participating in the conflict. So in this sense, it's clear on a global scale, if you look at the problem correctly, this is the only way it appears. And all these Europeans, they're just parasites, in my opinion, who will soon be out of power, and Trump will greatly contribute to this process. Hello, Oleg, wishing you good health. Yes, greetings to Boyko. So the next thing is that by the end of 2026, this is information coming from Europe. By 2026, the EU executive branch will take measures to eliminate unnecessary processes and encourage more collaborative work, conducting a thorough assessment of who has been doing what. The European Commission, which is responsible for carrying out most of the bloc's daily administrative functions, has about 32,000 employees. Can you imagine how many freeloaders there are in this EU structure? They're just money eaters. And besides that, they've usurped power. They squeeze it out of the main countries, Germany, France, and even Italy. They drain them dry. The situation Europe finds itself in now, this is who's to blame. This whole setup, the Euro-Socialist Union. And Ursula too, I've said this 100 times, but I want to repeat it again. She wanted to vaccinate absolutely everyone in Europe, without exception, including children, and by force. So, as far as she's concerned, I think it's not over yet. But the question of investigating all her actions, everything she did during her time in office, is still unresolved. And now, of course, she's aiming for the presidency of Germany. Just imagine what that's like. This is the social swamp, the Brussels social swamp, moving from one comfortable seat to another, a comfortable seat. And meanwhile, instead of actually helping Ukraine, it's already been more than 3.5 years of war. But all they did was run around with Zelensky, put a crown on his head, and now he goes to Europe every other day. But there's no real benefit from any of this. And here, only Trump's influence can really solve the issue. Let me correct myself. Me. I will be grateful for your respect. Thank you. You always provide accurate information. Let me repeat once more. There are 32,000 employees in this European Union. They're just freeloaders. Basically, this whole Euroclique was invented so that politicians could first make their rounds in their own countries, then, of course, ruin everything and make life worse there. And after that, they jump over to the European Commission or the European Union to keep stirring things up and robbing people. Countries that actually produce something have to give to those that produce nothing. So this is a purely socialist structure. Take from those who work and give to those who don't. It's the same thing in Germany. You know, they're already preparing a bill to raise the retirement age to 75. Can you imagine? This German worked hard his whole life, and now because Arabs have come in and all this Islamic riffraff, he has to work even longer so that there's enough money for their benefits. So I'm sure that the right processes will still take place in Europe, but Europe is already in a very difficult situation. And Trump, I'm sure, is focused on Ukraine, because Ukraine is a country where, at this moment, the people have managed to defend their country, to defend Ukraine, not the bureaucrats. Bureaucrats only make everything more complicated and practically destroy any initiative. Because all these officials and the bureaucracy, which hasn't been reduced since the war began, it turns out they live at the expense of the people who they pay taxes, or it's at the expense of America or Europe, which send money so that it doesn't collapse. That's this bureaucracy, because they worry about their own bureaucracy, and they also worry about Ukraine's bureaucracy. And they understand that if Zelensky's government falls, there will be big problems in Europe as well, because both Elon Musk and the whole Trump team, as I call them, the team of crusaders. By the way, this minister, the Minister of the Armed Forces, by the way, Trump actually wants to rename the position, not Minister of Defense, but Minister of War. I think that's correct because, in principle, America is just fine when it comes to defense. This Ministry of War, it's the right approach so that other countries know that if they try to do something to the conservative wing of America, they'll have problems. They'll face a war, and it's a war they will definitely lose. I think this is another point where Trump draws attention to this and shows all these communists, communist number one Xi, communist number two Kim Jong-un, and KGB agent Putin. This is the perfect trio of demons, really. And I think in the future there will be a tribunal, and this whole guard that has caused so much harm must absolutely be put on trial, including these social democrats as well. Here together are Obama, Clinton, Biden. I also consider this to be a single structure. And basically, this is how it happened, why Ukraine ended up in these military actions. Because on one side, the KGB agents and communists started a fight with the socialists. On the other side, and they showed they compete to see who can destroy more of their own population. It turns out for Putin, it's not a problem to sacrifice 1 million, 2 million people. He's a pure demon. And I'm sure that Trump is being directed, considering what Putin has done now. Well, basically, how he went all out embracing China. And he even said as much in his briefs, like, yes, you guys have joined forces, I wish you a good time together, but I understand that you've united against America. And I think that now to unite against America, for these communists, this is very risky, because Trump will still deal with each country individually, one by one. That's right, but Trump only keeps promising these 2 weeks, says Trump. It's always the same thing. But he says, well, just imagine the amount of work he has to do, the preparation needed to finish off Putin. It's not that easy. He did everything to bring down the price of oil. He tried to somehow come to an agreement with that KGB guy, but nothing worked out. And then he threw himself into the arms of China. And then India joined in as well. But Trump is preparing his platform. He's also dealing with domestic problems in America. And here you could say he's mocking these social democrats, and I'm sure he'll finish them off. It's not out of the question that as a whole party, they might not even survive until the elections. Because on one side, there are the Islamists who are completely out of their minds. There's nothing left of them. And on the other, there's this moderate socialist. But in the future, I always say that I believe the pendulum will shift and the main battle will be between conservatives and libertarians. We can talk more about that later. Who are Ukrainians defending themselves from? They started killing their own population in 2014. Back then, no one was expressing anything. Tatiana Savaitan, you have the KGB so deeply ingrained in your mind that you don't even realize what you're saying. Because in principle, Ukrainians as a people and as individuals don't need any war at all. And as for Soros, and this whole social Europe, plus the Democratic Party on one side and the KGB on the other, they made a deal to sell out Ukraine. First, they gave up Crimea together with Obama, and then they decided to give up all of Ukraine completely. But Ukraine remembers on an instinctive level who the KGB people are, the ones who came to Western Ukraine in 1939, evicted everyone from their homes, and sent them to Siberia. In other words, Ukraine doesn't need idiots like that, which is why there was resistance. And peaceful Ukrainians, they're not against Russians, they're against the KGB. They understand that Russians have ended up in the same mess as Europe with the socialists, and as America was with the Democrats. But Trump, thank God, is correcting the situation, and now everything is falling into place. Nastya Besovna, Tatiana, I've explained. Greetings to everyone on the stream. Team Kulachkov, greetings. I think I explained clearly where the cause is and where the effect is. Because you need to understand geopolitics a little bit, what happened, and then draw some conclusions. And the fact that your minds work with narratives and propaganda, you just use your brain, I'm helping you do that. US President Donald Trump on Thursday lowered tariffs, by the way, on the import of Japanese cars and also their goods. So basically, Trump has already reached an agreement with Japan on tariff plans. And you see, if a country moves toward an alliance, for example, then of course it becomes an ally. And so Trump was able to unite in order to put more pressure on Russia. He managed to do that. And I remember to bring the Philippines and Indonesia to his side as allies. So basically, all these countries are already allies of the United States. And in this way, many countries will join, switching to the side of common sense, because I don't really see everyone rushing off to China. And for some reason, all the children of officials go to Europe, but mostly to America. They aren't really going to China, because the same goes for Chinese students. Practically 500,000 of them are here. And in the other direction, there are only a few thousand, if that, so you can judge by this who is moving where, and where the truth is, and where the lies are. On September 5th, Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico will meet with Volodymyr Zelensky in Uzhhorod. Well, of course, Fico flew there to hug Putin and Xi, the communist, and probably he received some instructions to pass on something to Zelensky. But I think that here it's really about the Trump-Putin-Zelensky connection. Everything is clear here. What could he say to Zelensky? How about you become an ally of China? I wouldn't rule out that he might come with such a proposal. Do you remember back in January when Zelensky was throwing a party at the White House that Yermak said that maybe Ukraine would need to consult with China and so on? But now it's clear where China is heading. China is moving towards digital slavery and plans to do the same with other countries. And this whole One Belt, One Road initiative of theirs, that's what it's all about. A system has been created to quietly enslave other countries. That is, it doesn't come in with war or tanks and so on. First, it does something similar. Like a kind of Chinese World Bank, it enters third countries and gives them development loans with interest. And development always means mega projects, building roads or bridges and so on. And then Chinese companies come in right away. And basically, all that money comes back while the debts remain in that country. That's all there is to it. And in the end, the country goes bankrupt, a pseudo-election is held, and China takes over. By the way, the IMF did this for many years, and the same thing happened in Ukraine. Because all this lending at the government level, the IMF, they stay there for a while and then leave. And all these debts are shifted onto the people, and they bear no responsibility for anything. I think the situation will be seriously reconsidered now, including in the United States. It's Italy, Boyko, give us a like. Yes, thank you. An irresistible force, truth, lies, sometimes you just can't tell, lies, tratata, something unclear. Many people in Ukraine are against Trump and America. It takes time to see among Ukrainians that we should be with. Well, if you meant that what I'm saying is that Ukraine should be an ally of the United States, then absolutely. That is, Ukraine has only one path. It is an alliance with the United States of America. And we even created a party, the America Party of Ukraine, to emphasize that in the future, when there are elections, it would be possible to influence the situation and still suggest to Ukraine and Ukrainians not to look at or consider Europe, because Europe is completely, well, I don't want to say more, but America has already turned around. That ship is sailing in the right direction toward prosperity, economic growth, and so on. And if Ukraine ends up in the clutches of Europe, that will be the end of Ukraine for good, because on one hand, there are still KGB agents present, and on the other hand, it's Europe. So Ukraine would end up right back where it started. But Ukraine needs to break free into a free society, move in a free direction, and become an ally of the conservative wing of America. An ally of the United States? I understand. Of course, I support this as well, and thank you for your support. The unpredictability? How? So, good evening. Wishing you peaceful skies. All your rights, may God grant everyone love, health, and peace. Yes, well, we're kind of moving in that direction. But the fact is that over the past 30 years, and in America over the past 50 years, they've created so many socialists, it's not easy to stop. The process of madness, the process of lies, the process of deception by all these parasites, these politicians who have practically created the same situation in every country under the banner of one word. That word is democracy. They have simply usurped power. I've always said, democracy is a method, a tool, a set of instruments to seize power and never give it back. In other words, there's nothing democratic about it at all. It's a rule by fools.